Well, we are having Jerry Gidel back to our program. He is a very experienced analyst, and is going to explain us all these major export shipments to China that happened this week and some rebounds. Right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, what about these huge exports to China? What happened?
Well, that's what's got people scratching their heads, to say the least here, considering the fact that they had been a buyer last summer and made some pretty good purchases at that time, which turned out to be very fortuitous in how things have changed here in the U.S. And that on our output potential that definitely was emphasized with last month's USDA report. The twist of it is that a combination of the delays in the soybean harvest, particularly in the central and southern areas of Brazil here because of excessive rain. Boy, what a change of thought we had here. We were all worried about drought and the lack of getting it in last fall and things of that nature. Now, definitely Paraná and other areas down there have had delayed some of their harvesting situations, which pushes back the double crop corn. Now, the Paraná and southern Mato Grosso or Mato Grosso del Sul are where most of that double crop corn in that area happens. There's not much in Rio Grande. There's some, but minimal. But in general, we had quite a start here. Started on the 26th. We had a 1.3 million metric tons. Then we had 680,000 the next day on the 27th. And then yesterday, we ended up having a 1.7. I said, wow, that's even bigger than what we had on Tuesday. From there, and then, which turns out to be like 3.75 million metric tons. And then today, we topped it off with an even bigger amount at 2.1 million metric tons. That's actually the second largest one-day purchase in corn, and actually topped the previous Chinese purchase that we had at 1.9 back here in 2020. The biggest purchase was done by Russia back in 1991 for about this 3.7 million metric ton level. So definitely, this last 4 days have been quite historic in the world of corn purchases. And that really has changed the dynamics here on what our export expectations for the coming year look like, from the standpoint that we were going along, and even the USDA actually drifted back 100 million bushels from their original projection they had back here in the fall, down to 2.55 billion bushels, which, but the interesting thing about the last 4 days here, now 3 of these are going to be in next week's update, and then the one that came out today most likely will be in the week after. But throwing it all together here, that's 230 million bushels more, and that pushes us up above 2.1 billion bushels. So we're down in under the 400 or near the 400 million total right now. So that really makes the USDA kind of under the gun for their February 9th update.
And what do you think this tells us about the coming months? Because it's hard to tell if they are going to repeat this volume of imports from the United States, because we are having the Brazilian harvest ahead, and it seems that's going to be a full crop. And wow, we have still a lot of volume from Argentina too.
Right, the Argentine situation has got really muddled here over the last month or 6 weeks, and I think part of maybe was going on here in the background. There's been rumbles coming out of Buenos Aires that they were going to increase their export taxes, and moving up corn about 8% up to 22%. And beans up another, I think, up 5 or 7, up to 40%, and then even increasing the meal situation, and both corn and wheat along the way. So that's part of it. I think the real twist of this is the fact that, considering the fact that they've felt comfortable. I guess you'd have to say that they didn't need to buy any additional corn. But what turned on the Jets this week? Maybe they got a better weather forecaster about what's going to happen in Brazil here. That's the real tricky one. Is the impact of this delayed plantings on beans is now potentially going to delay corn plantings, and what that means to South America's weather situation. From there, I think in some ways it's part of what I think the nervousness is, and most of this, all this is old crop. In our essence, between now and the 1st of September is corn from the U.S. So, and to some extent, by late July and August, a lot of times there's a lot of corn available from Brazil. So it really does make things quite interesting here as to what they're seeing. One of the twists of it, and I don't know, it was there was an update from the National Weather Service, NOAA, whatever, here in the U.S., and looking at their El Nino, La Nina cycles and things like that. And they did make notice of the early this week, I think it might have been late last week, that this year's La Nina that had been kind of bottomed out and was starting to maybe lessen and see the waters move pretty dramatically to the eastern parts of, the western parts of the Pacific, but over by East Asia and that was maybe going to turn around and get worse and go back down again to even lower levels here next spring and summer. And that really would be a very interesting situation here. That impact could have an impact on South America's corn crop, and it could also have an impact on the southern parts of the U.S., basically in a kind of the line from the Kansas-Oklahoma border straight across the country over into North Carolina. That would indicate that there could be a significant dryness and drought. That's one of the classic signs of a La Nina in the U.S. And if it starts building out of the Southwest, there's always a taint that it could impact even the Western Corn Belt. And well, that would make a big difference. If we're not going to have a 178 kind of yields for the 2021 crop on corn, that really could make things different. So maybe they've got something going in their world that feeling like they want to get a hold of it. Because that's the case. That's the 550 we bumped into today is a classic kind of level. That was a high that we had in the mid 90s when we had a drought in 1995. And we didn't go over that level, by the way, on corn until the 2007, 2008 rallies because of ethanol expansion and things like that. So, but the interesting thing is, will this mean that we've got something opened up for the highs we've had back in the 2007, 2008 period?
And
from there.
With regard to soybeans, nobody has changed yet the estimates for Brazil. And a lot of many of the local analysts are projecting that the prices would remain high and profitable until the middle of the year. Do you see the same scenario there?
Well, that is an interesting one. We got those updates last week from many, many people after we got this moisture that came through, particularly in the northern parts of Brazil that had been pretty spotty in that. Instead of taking the crop sizes down below 130 or maybe down to 128, and that they all stayed in this 131, 133, mostly 132 and 33, which is a minor adjustment here from some of the initial ideas for the 2021 crop. And demand side of things on a worldwide basis is strong. And that, I guess the other twist of this thing, part of the reason I think it stayed up a little bit was all the internal issues going on in Argentina, so that their supplies of old crop beans, and maybe even the fact that they're probably more vulnerable, if you will, to a renewed La Nina issues, and that I think the market is giving us a benefit of the doubt here on what kind of crop there really is going to be, because we're still definitely 3 and maybe 4 weeks before we get any real substantial kind of early yield ideas out of Brazil, and maybe they're waiting to see if that's the case. But I'd have to, like you say, be cautious that this crop. We've got a huge crop potentially going to be harvested here let's just for practical say from March until mid to late May. That's a lot. Actually, when you put together the potential crops, that's over a 7 billion bushel scenario. U.S. only had a 4.1, so that's a whole mountain of beans coming at us. And so I guess that's part of my reason of being cautious. But today it's hard to say that when I see the kind of situation that popped up here in the corn, and that, and maybe this is all that they're going to do, or maybe just another million metric tons. Because really at this point, the USDA's numbers as they go to that February report, there's some people talking about 300 a 300 million increase just because of what's been purchased the last few days. I would be real surprised if the USDA increased their exports more than 200 million in that, and they could only do 150. And that, the biggest thing we're running into here is that our whole logistics situation here in the U.S. to get this corn out. I know beans are going to be pretty quiet, but boy, we're going to have to be shipping 55 to 60 million every week between now and the 1st of September. That's a mighty effort to even get those kind of numbers out of here, and to expect to get a lot higher than that. I guess I'm cautious right now. I like to see it. We can actually do that for at least a month or 6 weeks, so I can get some confidence that our logistics, which are very good in comparison to the world, but that also means that you're going through spring plantings, and you got to get them from the elevators, and you got to get from the farmer into the elevator and get it down the river, and it's a massive undertaking to get stuff substantially moved here in the U.S. like it is everywhere else. It's not like you can just point your finger and it's in the boat.
Yes, one additional thing about Brazil is that many of my American friends, sometimes they don't understand how the crops are so big, but they didn't have a perfect climate. The thing is that a lot of the surface increases every year, so we get more and more production as the year passes.
Well, definitely, you've got a tremendous opportunity to expand your areas of production, and so it makes things a little difficult, when you're constantly seeing U.S. We've kind of come to the point we have so many acres available to us, and we got to figure out if it's going to be corn or it's going to be soybeans. Now we have the prevent plants that we've going to help us expand our plantings this coming year, but at the same time, in the total number of areas, basically from the Rocky Mountains until the Appalachians, and maybe down into Georgia, and that's our basic acres. We're not going to be able to all of a sudden come up with more acres like you can in Mato Grosso and find some more grasslands to turn into productive land, and that's a big feature. There's no doubt about it, and it has an impact on the total production. And that's the interesting twist that happens, and why there's been a change in attitude that we don't tend to end up trying to cut back our acreages, because if we do that, then it just seems like they jump up somewhere else in the world, and so then we got to fight those expanded acres even more as we go forward. So there's been a whole different idea about how the U.S. agriculture needs to be competitive in the world on an ongoing basis, and that's definitely one of the big factors, is that there's plenty of area in South America yet to be explored.
Yes, well, in this week we had a lot of snowfall in the middle of the United States. And how do you think that is affecting the wheat crop?
Well, I think the snowfall actually kind of helped a little bit, insulated against the cold weather that's come in here after the Monday Tuesday event that came through here. It started in the Southwest, and we're also projected to have another snowstorm. I don't think it's as far into the western parts of the plains and into the Southwest this time on Saturday night into Sunday, but uh, the other twist of it is that, wow, that means there's going to be moisture going to change our situation here in the drought in the U.S. because there's definitely a impact of anything west of the from Colorado going westbound is extremely dry, and it's also leaked out into Nebraska and western Iowa and parts of the Dakotas. That, interestingly enough, except for Nebraska and parts of Iowa, there didn't get a lot of snow on it this time around. That's not great. By the way, it's not big repercussions on wheat. There's not. Nebraska is not. Their wheat ground is clear out in the western panhandle of Nebraska, and in South Dakota, there's not a lot of winter wheat there. They do a lot of spring wheat situations. So in general, I don't think there's been any damage to the wheat crop in the U.S. But and the moisture situation, it's always interesting. You talk about, wow, I got 10 inches of snow. That's only an inch of water. That's not really drowned in your ground with a lot of moisture. And at the same time, unfortunately, what happens is when the things finally warm up, they always warm up too fast. It all runs down the creek, so you don't always get in the ground. So it's always an interesting situation. We've had some massive snowstorms in the northern plains and on into the Rockies. And unfortunately, it didn't always change their moisture situation in those areas when it was all said and done.
So you are not seeing any big difference in the market of wheat?
Well, I think the wheat market still is continuing to trying to figure out for sure how this is all going to work with the Russian taxes and that. And also, I think the other factor that's boosting the U.S. side of this whole thing is the fact that if Argentina goes ahead and puts another additional export taxes on their grains, and particularly that's wheat and corn, the soybean side of things is pretty well there. We dropped it all the way down to 8%, or no, 12%, I should say, in corn and wheat here. Over the last year or so, but now they're talking about going back up to 20, and I think that's part of the reason for the strength, and also the fact that corn goes up, wheat needs to stay somewhat in the area because it gets too cheap. Then it's kind of like that has happened in China here in the last couple times. They put out a wheat tender out of the reserve. It disappeared, and 4 million metric tons went quickly into the domestic market over there. And interestingly enough, I'd have to say that really was indications of their feed demand and the feeding ability of wheat, not so much the fact that they needed more noodles in their diet. It had all to do with the fact that the quality of that reserve wheat was probably not the best, and it was really going to be used as feeding scenarios into the expanding hog operations and other things that are being raised over there in China.
Yes, this week the talk is really interesting with your commentary. We have been for more than 20 minutes here. So, Jerry, please provide us your expectation for the coming week and yet your marketing strategy and recommendations.
Right. Well, recently I've been a little cautious about this market making a big push right now, and that with the harvest in South America coming. Excuse me. But on the corn side of things, this enthusiasm from China definitely maybe has opened up another opportunity for this market to move through this 550 zone up into the 570 to maybe 590. I guess I'm cautious about the $6 mark falling in the near term here on things unless China puts on quite a show here for additional demand. Soybean side of things, we've Haven't really actually made the push on beans above the highs we had 10 days or so, 2 weeks ago after the crop report. And that I think there's a chance that it can be there. But I think the world is going to be cautious because about jumping in here with any big enthusiasm with the, the South American crop on the way. From there, we've been kind of holding that last 20% on corn and soybeans for old crop. And I guess I got to hang on for longer because this thing is added into something here that I didn't really anticipate. New crop wise, we've got a long ways to go here. I kind of feel comfortable with what I already sold here in the 20% level. So I guess I'm a 2020 guy this week.
Thanks a lot, Jerry. Have a great weekend.
You too. Hope you have a good trip yourself.